Alright guys, welcome back to another video, and today we'll be talking about the digestive system, which is our third video of our anatomy head to toe series. So first we'll talk about the mouth. So digestion starts in your mouth before even you take a bite, right? Your salivary glands will start to get active as you see and smell pizza, for example. You will then chew your food into pieces that are more easily digested, and then your saliva will take that chewed food and begin to break it down into a form that is easily absorbed and used by your body. And lastly, when you swallow, your tongue will then pass that food into your throat and then into your esophagus. So our esophagus is basically located in our throat, which is next to our windpipe, right? The esophagus will basically receive that food from your mouth when you swallow. Then the epiglottis, which is basically a small flap that falls over your windpipe, will then go over and prevent you from choking when you swallow. And then a series of muscular contractions within the esophagus would then deliver that food into your stomach. And then lastly, a sphincter will then contract and prevent the contents of the stomach from flowing back into the last part, which is the esophagus. And this is commonly known as acid reflux. Next, let's talk about the stomach. So the stomach is a hollow organ, or kind of like a container that holds your food while it is being mixed with stomach enzymes, like pepsin. These enzymes will then continue to process of breaking down food into a more usable form. The cells in the lining of your stomach will then secrete a strong acid and then powerful enzymes that are then responsible for this breakdown process. And lastly, when the contents of the stomach are processed enough, they'll release to the small intestine. So now let's talk about the small intestine. So your small intestine is basically a 22-foot long muscular tube that breaks down food using enzymes that are released by the pancreas and bile from the liver. So clearly 22 feet, not very small. The duodenum is basically a first segment of the small intestine and is largely responsible for the continuous breakdown process. And then the jejunum and the ileum will then lower in the intestine are mainly responsible for the absorption of these nutrients from the food that we just ate into the bloodstream. Right, and then the contents of the small intestine start out semi-gold, solid, and then end up in a liquid form after passing through the organ. And then that liquid that just formed after the nutrients are absorbed will then continue to be moved to this large intestine. So now let's talk about the large intestine. So the large intestine is basically responsible for processing waste so that emptying the bowels is easy and convenient, right? It's a 6-foot long muscular tube that connects the small intestine to the rectum, which is our next part. So clearly 6 foot long, it says large intestine, not very large in comparison to the small intestine. And then stool or waste left over from the digestive process is then passed through the colon. And as the stool passes through the colon, the water is then removed, and the stool is stored in sigmoid colon until a mass movement empties it into the rectum once or twice a day. And it normally takes about 36 hours for stool to get through into the colon, and when the descending colon becomes full of stool or feces, it empties its contents into the rectum to begin the process of elimination, also known as the bowel movement. So next let's talk about the rectum. So the rectum is a straight 8-inch chamber that connects the colon to the anus. The rectum's job is to receive the stool from the colon and let you know that there is a stool to be evacuated, and to hold the stool until evacuation happens. And when anything like gas or stool comes into the rectum, your sensors will send a message to the brain, right? The central part of your nervous system. And the brain will then make that deciding factor if the rectal contents should be released or if they should not be. Now let's talk about how to keep your digestive system healthy, right? How to keep it healthy, and let's see what we should do. So mainly we should always think about drinking plenty of water every day, right? You should think about drinking at least 8 cups of water every day for the normal human being. It should be around 12 cups of water per day for like athletes. Next, you should eat a healthy diet that consists of food that are rich in fibers. Next, you should minimize your intake of these foods high in fat, and you should always try to exercise regularly. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's contents, and I'll see you guys in the next video.